Again, is everything in my career has been kind of like incidental. A guy came up to me at the gym on the Capitol Square and said, I have this book that would make a great movie. And he handed me the book. He goes, you do that TV thing. And the guy was an author. His name was Carl Harder. He was a local author here in Madison. And it was about the Barbara Hoffman murders from the late 70s. Barbara was a student here at the UW in the late 70s. And she dropped out her senior year to go work at a massage parlor on the Capitol Square. And she would start dating her clientele, take out insurance policies on them and kill them. And it was it launched the political career of Jim Doyle, who was the DA at the time. And so he gave me this book. I wrote a screenplay on my spare time. It won the top honors at the IFP market in New York that year, and it got produced. And Mark Twain famously said the worst luck a young man can have is having really good luck the first day at the track. And I was like, this writing thing, piece of cake, easy schmeezy. So on the side, I would write, and my second screenplay won top honors in Paris, at the film festival in Paris, and I won the Screenwriting Fellowship in the Bahamas International Film Festival, and got to spend a week down in the Bahamas, and read my screenplay out in Park City, out in Sundance. And at that time I was like, I should maybe pay attention to this writing thing and take it more seriously. So the older I have gotten, I've gotten burned out in advertising, and I just like, I can't make any more pizza commercials, or I was just burned out. So I wanted to pivot back to my first love of long format storytelling, and I used the pandemic as an excuse to dive into writing full time. And I'm a member of the Directors Guild. I couldn't even work during the pandemic because my union wouldn't even let me work for the first 8 months. So I wrote every day. And during the pandemic, I ended up writing over the span of 2.5 years of pandemic, I wrote 6 screenplays. So, and 3 are being shopped around right now by my agent. So, big lesson I learned was if you're going to write, approach it like a professional athlete and do it every day. And because it's so competitive, it's like you need to dive in. So
Angie, it's tough act to follow, but how did you get into this crazy business and from the producing side?
Sure.
Development side?
I went to film school at DePaul University in Chicago, and I would say if we're looking at like specific moments that I can point to that helped the trajectory of my career in some way, I would say that one was I think summer before my senior year of college, I got a call to PA for a film in Antioch, Illinois. Does anyone know where that is? I've been there, and I don't even know where that is. And it was a wild movie, all overnight, like a horror film on a man-made party island in the middle of a lake. Like we would take these little boats to set every day. It was freezing. It was not an ideal situation, but I remember that in order to take that gig, I had to immediately quit with no notice my very well-paying hostess job that I had landed a few months before, which I did to the dismay of probably my managers. But I got the job offer that day, and I said yes that day, and then I left the next day. Quit my job that day and left the next day. And on that gig, I was a key set PA, and I met a gentleman named Matt Corrado. I don't know if you know Matthew Corrado.
I think I do.
Maybe. He was a first AD, and he was doing indie films, and he was doing commercials, also DGA, and we hit it off. And here I am. I was 20. Really ambitious, and he was the one. He then left the freelance world to go start the production division of The Onion, which had moved from New York to Chicago at the time. This was in like 2012. And because we hit it off on that set, he called me in to production manage the web series they were working on at The Onion to help him with that. And then by the time I graduated at 21, I was an executive producer at The Onion, full-time, helping build kind of their branded content division and work with their crazy staff and all of that. Didn't last long for me because I don't think I was ever meant to be employed by someone other than myself. However, what that experience taught me, looking back, was the motto I have when you're building any sort of career is just say yes. Like if someone wants you to help, if someone wants you to get involved, you know, as long as it's an overall safe situation, like just say yes, just go do it. Because I think the thread I hear in both of your shares as well is like, oh, I met this person who then X amount of years later, this happened. And so the relationships you build when you say yes really come back to benefit you. And then the second decision I made was I did not go to Los Angeles. And I spent some time there in school, but I stayed in Chicago. And for me, I consider myself an entrepreneur first and a producer second. And I liked the idea that Chicago was a little bit less formed, a little bit more entrepreneurial in nature. I felt like I could be a bigger fish in a small pond. And then the third thing I would say is 10 years later, after you put in, I think you got to put in like a solid 10 years before it starts to become, the connections start to be easier, making things starts to be easier. My business partner and I, Brittany Ward, just formed our production company. And we had a film at Sundance this year, and we have another feature and two features and two shorts that will be released this year. We play mostly in the $2 to $10 million low budget feature space. So I say that because I think I'm at a third juncture. So if I come back here in 15 years and you ask me, I will be like, remember that time you were on that panel when this was just beginning? What was a moment that your career pivoted? And so I'm hopeful that I'm in the middle of something.
That's great.
With an Oscar?
Hmm?
With an Oscar. 15 years from now, we're all going to have Oscars.
Yes, with an Oscar.
Working with writers and creatives being writers and writers. So let's say just start at the initial like idea point. Like everybody's got at least one good idea for a film and television show. Like, in my experience, right?
Sure.
Every uncle at Thanksgiving always says like, you know what you should do? That's what my uncle says. So I got a story for you. Drop everything you're doing. So let's just start at that stage. Is there anything, even before you fully develop an idea, certainly write the idea, is there anything that you can or should do to quote unquote prepare for success?
I don't know how encouraging this is. I tend to take the hard truth angle, so if I bother anybody, I apologize. Start thinking of the next one. You need so many more. It's not just the one. Write it. Like as stupid as that advice is, if you have the idea, don't just sit on the idea. The idea itself is not going to sell itself. You have to put in the work in order to actually execute it, which then also means you have to educate yourself to know how to execute it, and then you have to spend the time writing it, and then not assuming this is the one. Every major producer, executive, writer, who's working regularly, they have hundreds of projects that they're juggling, even if they're just ideas. They're constantly in some form, or maybe hundreds is a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're constantly juggling other potential ideas. What else might you do? They have time that they're setting aside. They're at least in just like their notes app, other ideas. And then they're focusing on the one that they're trying to finish right now. And so I think it's a mindset that you need to have that you gotta play the long game here. This is not a get rich quick or ever scheme. Right?
Yeah.
So you need an answer to the what else you got.
But this is also in like a positive sense. Like this, if this is what you want to do. I mean, what I gleaned from what Angie was saying, at an early age, she knew she didn't want to be a hostess the rest of her life.
Yes,
You
that's
know, like I'm
terrible
making a
job.
decision to do this, and then she went for it. I think that, I'm kind of speaking from personal experience. I'm at, from ages 18 to 22, like most people, you're kind of just figuring out, do I like this and do I really want to do this? The sooner you can make the decision that you're going to do it without worrying about whether or not it's going to work, it'll work better because you're not second guessing yourself. So I would say it's a mindset first and foremost.
Yeah, I think just to build on what you're saying, you can't look at it like about being like a success other than, well, it depends how you define success. If you're following your passion, the success will follow. And I think that's a really big thing. And
Because you see success easier.
you
As
define
opposed to
success.
right,
You
yeah.
define success. I feel more successful. It's not necessarily getting a big paycheck, although a big paycheck is nice, but I was getting a nice fat paycheck every time I directed a commercial campaign. But I get more I feel more successful as a creative now that I'm writing. But I think a big mistake that I made as a writer, like for my second script, I championed that one script for years, kind of on the side, while I was doing my my day job.